Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello.
This is a horror movie podcast that we talk about horror movies every week. We get together, we've watched the movie, we talk about it. It's really that simple. Today's movie is none other than 1BR, which is a new release from like a month or two ago. It came out. Yeah, it came out in April by the time it came out. So it does say 2019 IMDb, but it's one of those things where it was at festivals or whatever early. But it's really a 2020 release. So we'll start spoiler free as we always do. The premise of this film is that this young woman named Sarah moves into a complex in Los Angeles. She's sort of making a fresh start. She wants to be a costume designer, and she basically breaks one of the rules. They've got like a rule, a clause in the tenants agreement that's, you know, she's not allowed pets. Much as you can see behind me in the video version, you can see my own Mr. Giles, which, by the way, her cat's called Giles. We just acknowledge the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer right now and get it out of the way.
Of course. I mean, you get double Giles in this movie, because I believe one of the actors is named Giles as well.
Oh, really? Oh, you're right, yeah. Oh, it's all Giles all the time in this movie. Oh, interesting.
But it's a little bit on the nose, though, because it's like, all right, you name it after, you know, one of the most famous watchers, and then you have a movie where people are watching you, like, all right.
That was tenuous at best. Tenuous at best. So yeah, she has a cat. She's not allowed to cat, and basically what I'm telling you here is essentially what was in the trailer is that, you know, maybe the neighbors are going to be scary, intimidating. Maybe they're going to torment her because she's broken the agreement. But the trailer, I'll give the trailer credit here. The trailer doesn't really go too far into it, because this movie, from about the 25-30 minute mark, everything was basically new and wasn't in the trailer from that point on.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised where it ended up going.
Because I expected from the trailer that this was going to be like just a slow build where she thinks the neighbors are doing things for like most of the movie, and it would only be the last like maybe 20 minutes where all hell breaks loose and we find, you know, or if it's assuming it's really happening. But it actually, from about the 30-minute mark onwards, it kind of just goes straight into an idea, which it kind of kept quiet in the trailer, which, you know, I'll give it a compliment for. I'll commend it and say the trailer did a good job of not revealing too much, which is rare in this day and age. Yeah. So obviously, I'm not going to reveal it just now. We'll keep that for spoilers. So unfortunately, the spoiler-free section of this may have to be a bit later than usual because we can't talk about what most of the movie is. But we could definitely give sort of impressions of quality and a lot of the, you know, the elements like, you know, acting, direction, blah blah blah, all the usual stuff. So, Tim, how did you feel about 1BR?
I was a little disappointed, to be honest. I mean, in part because I got like a little bit of a hype about this. Like, I saw a lot of people saying like, "Oh, hey, this is like really cool, like little surprise indie film. It's like, you know, really great and stuff." So I had high hopes for it, and ultimately, I think it's fine. You know, it's serviceable. I don't think it's like horrible or any way. I think, you know, it has an interesting idea, but you know, it's I think the story is probably, you know, its biggest you know, thing that it has like going for it, because I do think it is an interesting story, but yeah, I mean, ultimately I don't think, like, you know, it's something that is like, you know, didn't really stand out as having like a lot of style, or, you know, the characters seemed a little bland, you know what I mean? But I mean, I don't want to be super negative because it's not like horrible or anything. It's just, yeah, I watched it and was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I might go slightly higher and say, instead of just saying it's fine, I'll say it's all right. Which I don't know how much more positive people will count that for, but basically to say that I think it's not bad, and like you say, I think the story and its core ideas are probably the best thing that it's got going for it. I mean, I thought some of the cast were alright as well, to be fair, but it feels like this weird in between thing where as I was watching, especially as it was getting towards the ending, I could almost see, and this is unfair to any movie to say this, but I could almost see the Hitchcock version of this movie as I was getting to the end of it, and I could see like how this would work with a Hitchcockian sensibility, and immediately I thought, yeah, that would benefit this movie so much. Or even something like The Invitation. Like, I could see The Invitation, the creators behind that, if they tackled this, maybe it would go that one step further. But
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it feels like it's conflicted between the good movie that it almost, I mean, it kind of is, but it's never great. It's definitely never great, I'll say.
Right.
It's kind of conflicted between the great movie that it could be and doesn't get a million miles away from, and then also just how every kind of like VOD direct-to-video like horror movie feels these days, which is a little bit in the bland side. Now, that said though, I do feel like, and this was frustrating about this, is that there's a lot of elements that I think are annoyingly close to actually feeling like they're unique. Because I said that it feels like every VOD direct-to-video horror movie, and it does to a point, but there is almost a sense here where I could almost just with a slight nudge. There's just a slight nudge in the style and the look of the movie. Because I think, yeah, this doesn't want to feel like it looks like Texas Chainsaw. That's not the visual style that this movie needs or wants. So it's not, again, far off from what I think it should feel like in terms of its ideas. I feel like ultimately the suspense itself is just kind of lacking, and maybe the core character journey just needed to be a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger, so that I was really rooting for the character. I will say this though, I mean, given the way it starts, like the opening 20 minutes, I don't think you're expecting just how I don't even want to say extreme, just how much it commits to its idea. When it commits to its idea, it really commits. Like, it really goes down that path. But
yeah. No, yeah, I mean, to piggyback off some things you said, I definitely feel like I saw like shades of other movies in here. Like there was some stuff like the Invitation, and like maybe some like Midsommar kind of beats that it reminded me of. But I think, unfortunately, one of the big problems is at least, because it's not like it's ripping stuff off, but it just like reminded me of some of these other movies. But those other movies have such a distinct like feel and style to them, that I feel like this is one of the big things this is lacking. And I don't want to be too hard on it, because obviously it's a smaller indie movie, so it's I'm sure that they didn't have like a huge budget and everything.
Yeah, but to be fair, Tim, so was Halloween, so
true. Yeah, but well, I mean, that's that's like one of the weird things I always kind of frustrates me about like these like, I think you had a good point when you're saying these kind of VOD movies all have like a similar kind of bland look, but there's been like small independent movies like for the last 40-50 years that have not had this look, that have actually looked like really good. And I guess is that the difference between film and digital, like
it may be part of that. It may be people, you don't have cinematographers who are really, like, I don't know, talented, I guess. I mean, that was a bit harsh. The sad part is that, first of all, I want to just, before I forget, I just want to say Midsommar, because you said that really weird. Midsommar.
Midsommar.
But yeah, you have, because I don't want to be too harsh on this, because I do actually think the direction and the look is, it almost feels too harsh, but it's very serviceable. But I mean that in a complimentary way, because there's a lot of these VOD movies that do feel even more like,
that's true, like,
feel very more kind of like just the basics, whereas this feels like, no, it's going a bit beyond that, but it doesn't go enough to actually feel like it's got a real style either. It's kind of in this weird middle ground. But now you're right, like, if you like, I mean, independent horror, this is the weird thing, we talk about these like cheap VOD movies, but like, yeah, I just jokingly said, yeah, Halloween was a cheap independent movie, so was Texas Chainsaw, so was Phantasm, so was like a lot of the classics we think of were made for next to no money by people who were, relatively speaking, amateurs, and just did it because they really believed in what they were doing and had the talent to pull it off. And I do, there is almost a sterilization of the low budget movie that, and maybe it is through like, maybe it's harder to get a distinct look on digital. I don't know, maybe it is, but I don't feel like it should be the case, though. I feel like you could still do something with it. But maybe more of these. Maybe all this movie needs is to be shot in 16mm. Maybe that's all it needs. Just look a bit rougher and feel a bit scratchier, and maybe we'd get something out of it then. You're back, Tim. You're back. You froze for a second. You're back.
Yeah. Yes, I could kind of hear you, but it's just garbled a little bit.
That's all right. I was just saying that maybe all it needs is 16mm. You know, if it just looked a bit scratchy, felt a little bit rougher, maybe that's half of what it needs, is just a little bit of something. It doesn't feel like every other, you know, digital shot movie that we get these days.
Yeah.
Because I think without the distinct look that, and it's not like every movie that was shot in film looked the same. They didn't. They all had kind of distinct looks themselves. But I think because so many movies look the same now, that all the other elements have to really make up for it, and really it has to be distinct in story. It has to be that much stronger in character and all these other things. So yeah, I don't know. Again, this feels kind of harsh because I don't want to discourage
right
independent filmmakers from going and trying to do the best they can and
no, definitely.
Impressive. So
no, yeah, definitely not. Like, yeah, like, you know, I feel, I mean, like, really, like, any time, you know, it feels so much easier to, you know, really rag on, you know, some big, you know, over budget Hollywood movie, because it's like, yeah, I mean, who cares about those people? It's probably made by, like, you know, some faceless boardroom or whatever. But, you know, it always, like, you know, feels a little weird when you're like, yeah, just kind of, you know, picking on like a little guy that, you know, probably just, you know, really wanted to, you know, make this movie. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a shame because it feels like, because nothing in this movie is particularly stupid. I mean, I'm sure someone who's like jaded will pick something apart, but there's nothing that came off as laughably bad. There's nothing that that struck me as being like a really ill-conceived idea. Like, it feels like it's got a, you know, a message. It's got some themes that it's playing with. You know, I could feel kind of the social commentary at work as I was watching it, and that's always good to have some subtext, especially in a horror movie. But
I was never bored throughout it. Like, you know, I was always, you know, engaged and wanted to see where it was going.
I guess what we're really saying here is it's a good streaming movie.
Yeah,
if it happens to be on Netflix or Prime or whatever, yeah, sure, put it on. You're going to have a bad time, but
yeah, without a doubt.
You know, but actually paying to own it, or, you know, I mean, it's not. I wasn't in theaters, but if it was,
yeah, like I can't really, you know, see myself watching this again. You know, at least definitely not anytime soon.
I'm not mad I watched it though, and that's not something I can say for a lot of the stuff we try on here.
Totally.
So, you know, that's worth something. That really is worth something. It's kind of like what we're saying when we're talking about what movie was it recently, but we said that it's just good. It's not great, but that's okay. We need more just good movies. Not everything has to be a knockout. And this, you know, maybe doesn't quite go completely into good territory, but it's kind of on the line. It's kind of like doing okay.
Yeah.
There, so for what that's worth, there you go.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. Like, we do kind of live in a time of extremes. Like, everything is the most amazing thing ever, or, you know, the suckiest piece of suck, you know, that's ever sucked. So,
like The Boy.
Yeah, no, but so
The Boy
I feel like. Oh, heavens no.
That got a stronger reaction. The Boy 2 got a stronger reaction than The Boy 1. All right.
Yeah, I see, like, all these people, like, getting excited about, like, Tenet, even though it's, like, you know, like, you still want to go to, like, I don't know, every time I see someone, you know, say that they're willing to risk going to a theater in the middle of a pandemic to see Tenet, like, my first thought is always, like, come on, guys, it's not The Boy 3. Like, you know.
Oh, how do I respond to that? Oh, there's no response to that. We just have to move on. I think we're ready to talk about.
Well, the point I was making is that, yeah, like, I feel like since everything is usually kind of like, you know, on the extreme side of things, that sometimes when something is just okay or down the middle, like, I don't know, people feel even more dismissive of that, you know. But there's nothing wrong with being just good, just fine.
No. I mean, it means that it's probably gonna be that memorable. I doubt, like, you know, maybe it'll be in consideration for the low end of our top 10 for 2020, depending on what comes out or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, but after that, yeah, I expect we'll never think about it again.
Sure.
Unfortunately, even though I do think it's got some ideas, and I kind of like the vibe of some of the elements of it. So yeah, I think this is the point where we'll say we'll go to the spoiler section. Before we do that, though, I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to David Short, Tyler Hurst, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palisades, and Board Now. They are all patrons at the $20 tier or above, which makes them producers. But you, of course, can support us for as little as $1 per month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you get a bonus exclusive episode of Streams After Midnight every month. We just recently did Project Metal Beast was the last one we put out, at least at the time of recording. The next one might be out by the time that this goes up, but yeah, so go check out. There's a back catalogue now of about 17 episodes that are exclusive to patrons. So just $1 a month will get access to those. At the $5 tier, you get early access to all the movie review episodes by a day, and you get to vote once per month on one of the episodes as well. You always get 4 choices, and everyone gets to vote, and it's a fun time. And that's how we end up doing garbage like Rumpelstiltskin. So thank you very much. But yes, full spoilers then for 1BR. So here's the thing. So she moves in. All the stuff from the trailer where she's sneaking in the cat, and I was like, oh, something bad's going to happen to the cat, and
yeah,
you know, the cat does get put in the oven, and we don't really see it, but it's still. Wesker was on my lap when I was watching this, and I just sort of held him close. I was like, oh, my pretty cat, you're okay. But from there, you know, very quickly, like, when she tries to kind of question things, or I mean, even in fact, just as soon as this happens, like the good-looking kind of neighbor who's been, you know, kind of nice to her, maybe flirting a little bit, you know, immediately shows up with a syringe and tries to like tie her down, and it's like, okay, this is escalating much quicker than I thought. I thought there was going to be a section after the cat where she's just sort of nervous and looking around at her neighbors and like, who is it? Who's the one?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that it was going to be like that throughout most of the movie, where there was going to be like a list of rules, and it was like, you know, each one she would break in like some slight way, and then you know, it'd have, you know, this kind of horrible consequence. But yeah, I'm surprised that, you know, that they don't go that way, and that, yeah, it is fairly quickly that it's like, you know, it escalates and shows you what the movie is about. I do gotta say though, like, come on, lady, like, you, like, you know, I've lived in apartments and stuff, and like, you can't hide a pet. Like, that's like tough. Like, you know, landlords are always coming in and out. Like, people are gonna hear like meowing and smell like litter and stuff. Like, she didn't think this through. It annoyed me.
I actually have friends who have literally hid the fact that they have 2 cats from the landlord successfully, may I add.
They're idiots and criminals.
And then the neighbors are all cool with it. The neighbors even hide the cats when there's an inspection. It's all, you know, it's all in the up and up.
Yeah, I mean, I had I mean, I don't know, you know, how much effort they put into it, but like, I mean, I feel like our landlord like came in like so often because, you know, we'd always have stuff that was broken or need fixed, or, you know, we, you know, had like, you know, roommate would move out and then he would need to come in and inspect stuff. That's like, it seems like it'd be such a headache to have to keep up that charade.
Nah, I don't think landlords need to show up as much. Because typically speaking, if something needs fixed, it's not the landlord who does it. They'll call someone who doesn't care about what the rules are. They just, you know, they'll call.
I mean, usually for us, it would be our actual landlord.
No, very rarely. And if there's an actual inspection to make sure you've not ruined the place, that's always like, you always know about that in advance. It's never a spot because they have to make sure someone's in. They can't just wander in when no one's there.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I did not expect that to be Tim's core problem with the movie. All I was thinking, yeah, you defy those rules, you keep that cat happy. But yeah, so we'll go back and like fill in some of the blanks for the early stuff. But so from here, she's put in a room, like a blank, empty room, and she's told to put her hands up against the wall from the leader, who's been very nice to her as well, and the sort of the blonde guy, Brian. Jerry's the leader as well, and you know, it's Brian and Jerry, so it's not Ben and Jerry, it's Brian and Jerry. Just remember that. And they're like, okay, you're putting your hands up there, you're putting your legs back, almost as if she's getting ready to be searched by the police or something like that. And he's like, okay, so this is a position that's designed to cause stress. You're going to be in pain after a few minutes, and then and an hour you're going to be it's going to feel unbearable in about an hour. And while that light's on, you have to be like this, and when the light goes off you can rest, but you're not allowed to, otherwise thing it. And she tries to resist, but then the creepy guy that's been kind of staring at her, Lester, who's got like the glasses with the one eye patch on, he comes in, and it turns out the reason why he's missing an eye is because he tried to resist this. And we quickly get the idea that everyone who lives here goes through this conditioning process. That's what the movie is. And and at the end of the movie I was like, okay, we're totally going to get her broken down, and either it'll be the ending at this point, and it wasn't. It actually is earlier, and then there's more of an ending afterwards. But I thought, the ending of this could totally be that she becomes conditioned, and it ends with her like kind of luring the next victim out of the trap. She'll be like, it actually goes further than that, and she has more of a happier ending, I guess we'll say.
Yeah.
But it's all about this conditioning and this torture, and her like having to go through this to like prove she can. And she does actually, after a couple of days, eventually fall down. She gets like these milkshakes or like protein shakes like through the door, and like a bedpan to like do the toilet. But she does eventually, after like 3 days of doing this on and off, like collapses, and they nail her hands to the wall as a punishment. And we find out that a lot of the others also have these like marks in their hands because they also failed at least one point. So what I thought was interesting about this sort of point is that, okay, this is going way deeper into this idea than I thought it was. Like this movie, it's so early on in the movie that it takes this turn that, okay, this is what the movie's about. Like I thought it was going to be an hour of like suspecting the neighbors, and we're already at, no, they're a goddamn cult, and they're brutalizing her to condition her in.
Yeah, it essentially becomes like a cult movie where I thought it might be a like possibly even like supernatural movie or something, like where like something about this complex where like you have to follow the rules, or or
you're just thinking of the boy, the list of rules.
And what can I say? I love my rules. But no, like I was surprised that it does like take this turn, and then like you said, like it fully commits to it. Like it's not like oh, this is a like the backdrop of the movie or whatever. It's like, oh no, we're fully in, and we're gonna explore this idea to the fullest.
Yeah, because I actually, one of the elements I really liked, and I almost wish they went into it more, is the idea that the guy who started these rules is like a book that keeps getting passed around of this guy who started this, the 4 fundamentals of a better community. And we see like kids of like in like a little classroom who are being shown videos, interviews with this guy who started this, explaining the rules of this in like a chat show. And it felt, and I kind of dug that vibe, this idea of like this crazy dude from the 70s who had this idea to make the world a better place of everyone is selfless, everyone watches out for each other, everyone also watches each other for security reasons, and everyone is punished but then forgiven immediately once they've been punished, like all these things. But it's all very brutal, it's all very cult-like, and gradually they let Sarah like do more and more things where she's kind of like trusted to be around, and it's like they keep giving her lie detector tests, the idea being that every single time they do it they ask her if she wants to be a part of the community still, and she says she says yes at one point, says, well, and it's clearly a lie. She's like, well, I want it, I just don't want it yet. But the whole idea is that she's been broken down over time, and okay, and she keeps being told she's got a purpose here. She's got a purpose in this community. That's why they want her. And it gets to this point where she eventually does break down and says yes, and it's after there's an old woman there who she's been helping. Like before she knew what was going on, she was helping this old woman who's a little bit senile and needs help moving around and her medication and whatnot. And this old woman actually basically lets them kill her because she can't serve the community anymore. And she has to sit there and like sort of hold her hand as this woman dies, and she's like distraught about it. But the heart-to-heart she has afterwards kind of like finally convinces her that, no, I want to be in this community. I want to be a part of this. And she gets this little welcoming party because she's now finally finished her initiation. She gets like branded behind the ear with a symbol.
Oof, yeah.
And they're like, okay, so this is it. And she's like, okay, Sarah, you want to know what your purpose is here because we had a purpose for you. And then they bring out the creepy guy Lester, who's been kind of staring at her from a distance. And it's like, this is Lester. And he lost his wife a couple of years ago to cancer. And as soon as he saw you, he said, she reminds me of my Jessica. So you're going to be a great couple. And then make some sort of kiss in front of everyone. And it's like, it's actually uncomfortable and creepy. And I was like, okay. So it's this idea that even though she's kind of accepted the community, now she's been forced into this role that she doesn't want, and it's obviously I think the satire here, the way this is working, it was especially when he takes her back to their apartment now, because now she's going to live with him, and it's quite sinister where he's in the bedroom and he's saying, hey, come in closer, and there's an interruption, and we'll get to what the interruption is in a bit, but when she comes back later, it turns out what he was trying to show her in the bedroom is that he's made a little sewing space for her, because she likes to make dresses, she likes to design dresses and costumes, and he's actually being oddly kind of sweet, despite the fact that he's kind of been this creepy guy who's been watching from a distance. And there's a line here that really stuck out to me that kind of just clicked out of place what this movie's really about in a lot of ways. Maybe there's other things that people can read into, but he says that for the first few years he wanted to escape or kill himself, and he hated it, and he wanted to leave. And Jessica is the one who sort of convinced him that this was his life, and it could be a good life. And he's like, this is our life, and it could be a good life. And I'm like, okay, so really all this cult, this community, this complex it's essentially just an analogy for like the system in society, and how we're kind of beat down into fulfilling our roles in society, and we're told we can't make it further. Because it was the same again with later on when the friend from earlier in the movie, which we'll get into, Lisa, Sarah says something really harsh to her later, where she's like, "Well, you're 38 and you really think you're still going to be an actress? No, you're like, this is your role. This is the best option you have right now, that you're ever going to have, is to be a part of this community." So it really is about kind of beating someone down into like taking their place in the society that they've been given. That someone's decided that they belong to. So the idea that she's been given to this guy is like, okay, you're now his girlfriend, you're now his wife, this is what you are now, and you have to fulfill this role. And it's like, but as if you accept that, you'll be happy. And it's kind of like, if you just accept what's given to you, you'll be happy, and never want to be anything else. Never want to be more than that. So obviously, the conclusion of the movie is very much going to be about like her finally breaking out of this, because there's a lot of stuff at the start of the movie where her boss, because she's like a temp at a law firm or whatever, her boss kind of pushes her over a lot, makes her do extra work with no overtime, things like that. And Lisa keeps saying, hey, it's your life, make your choices, and all these things. So that's kind of what the movie's building up to, is her finally saying no. So it's kind of that thing where it presents it in a really normal way, where she's kind of a pushover, and then the whole point is at the end of the movie, she's in the most extreme of circumstances, she sort of fights back and says, no, this is my life, I will not let you dictate what it is or who I am. So I mean, the core idea and the message is there, and there's obviously some other details we have to get into, but so I respected, like, I think that's a really strong, it's a strong foundation. It's a strong foundation for what the movie is and wants to be, I think.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Like you can see like a lot of, like, made me think of stuff like like jobs I've had or whatever, where it's like, this, I don't like this, it sucks, but like, at the same time, it's like, well, I guess I can do it and be comfortable, and it's kind of like you're saying, like, it's, you can make a life here, by doing this kind of stuff. But it's I was surprised that like it does feel like she is willing to accept it, like, kind of circumstances come together, where she breaks free and just decides to make her escape and stuff. But I kept thinking that we were going to see more hints of like, okay, she's just playing along until she gets her chance, and there was like a little bit stuff like that at first, but then it does feel like there is a point where oh hey, she actually might be settling in and like this, if
I think she was. I think that actually makes the story kind of work better, actually, because it's kind of like the whole point is that she escaped like her father, who, that's kind of one of the elements we've not mentioned yet, is that her father like cheated on her mum when her mum was dying of cancer, and she's kind of got an estranged relationship with him now, and her dad eventually shows up at one point to try and like make amends with her and wants to like sort of be back in her life, and she doesn't really want to accept it. And it's kind of this weird sort of double-edged thing where she has to like make him go away and never come back, or they're going to kill him because he'll know too much. So she has to actually confront him, but through coercion and not the way that she should naturally do it, which is kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is that like she relied on her father, and now she's going to rely on this community, and she shouldn't. She should be independent, and she should be all these things. And from there, the movie kind of like, I think the ultimate point is that she actually did get tempted by it. She wanted to be this comfortable thing, you know. When Lester like explains the whole, this is our life, this can be our life, we can be happy. She sits down next to him and sort of holds his hand, and it's kind of like she has accepted it. Like, this is the easy choice. This is the easy way out, to just accept that this is what it is and just go from here. And it's not until like she has to be a part of like indoctrinating someone new, and specifically Lisa, the person who she was friends with at the start of the movie, because part of the process is to make sure no one comes looking for her, is that they like hijack her like her phone and her social media and stuff, and make sure everyone hates her, that everyone doesn't like her and doesn't want to come looking for her. And Lisa ends up coming in, and she's going through the same process, and it's like this thing where she sees her come in, and we get like a montage of her going through the early parts where they're watching her on the cameras, and they're doing the same thing. And it's when she's in the room, supposedly doing the the hands on the wall thing, but she's fighting it, because as we see from the start of the movie, Lisa is someone who fights this kind of thing. She always is. She's not a pushover like Sarah was, and Sarah even points that out. When the boss tried to make her do extra work, Lisa would be like, no, I'm going to leave it 3, or I'm going to do this. Like,
yeah,
almost too far in the other direction, where she feels like she's she's not a good employee, but still, she keeps fighting back, and eventually they send in Sarah, who Lisa's not seen here yet. Lisa thinks Sarah's long gone, and she comes in. We have this scene where she's like, no, this is a good place. I'm happy here. You're going to have to accept this, and you're going to be thankful you did. And she's like, no, you're scared. You've just swapped one captor for another. This is not good at all. You hate this. This is horrible. And it's not until what's his name, Jerry, is going to nail Lisa in the ear. He's got literally a chisel for her ear, and she's making Sarah hold the chisel. That Lisa says, hey, it's your life. It's your life. That she makes the choice to stab Jerry instead. So that's kind of her moment where she says, no, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. And so, yeah, I mean, it does have that core character story that I think it definitely needs. And I think it's relatively successful. It's just not, I don't know. I guess I could just go further with it. I could be more invested in it. I could be more of a, like, because that should be an F yeah moment, right? That should be an F yeah. She's finally fighting back and not just going into the trappings, not just accepting her place in the world, that she's been told that that's what she is and that's all she can be. She's fighting out of it, and there is kind of a sweet moment that follows, because I mean there's the shocking death of Lisa, because Jerry's not quite dead and he just shoots her in the back of the head and tries to convince Sarah to stay and whatever. Sarah fights back, shoots Jerry, or stabs him multiple times, and then takes his gun. And then comes out into the place, and there's a sort of, I actually quite like this scene where a lot of the community are surrounding her, and they're kind of trying to talk her out. So there's even one person comes running at her with a knife, who she shoots.
Yeah, and this is the kind of point where she's like, oh, like, hey, like, we're free, we can escape now, and then it has feels like a I don't know, maybe like a kind of like old classic like sci-fi kind of twist where it's like oh, like we don't want to escape, no, we like it here, and it wasn't just this one guy that's controlling us, it's there's much more, and we're happy to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can maybe kind of stretch this and say that all the people who are already indoctrinated and don't want to leave, who genuinely still want to stay even after Jerry's dead, because it doesn't matter who the leader is, because Jerry didn't start this. It was the guy from the 70s that started it. Like, Jerry's just the one running this place. Like, you could maybe stretch this out and say that this almost represents people who are conditioned not to challenge authority and like the government, and not to challenge the way things are, who are just like, accepting that this is the way things are. This is we don't have free healthcare because that's the way it's supposed to be, and nothing else would work. Like it wouldn't work. So this is how we do it. Like, that's just an example. I mean, I'm not trying to make a specific statement.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to that where people do kind of favor like being comfortable versus the unknown. So like
Yeah.
the idea of like, yeah, I mean, maybe we're trapped here, but at least we know what the deal is versus like we have to go out into like the big scary unknown world like alone. Like, no, we don't want that. Like, and yeah, I mean, it can be kind of frustrating, like especially you kind of see it in her, like in the end when she's like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like we're free, and then the idea that people don't want that, it can be kind of maddening.
Yeah. So I mean, the themes are there, which is great.
Sure. Yeah.
I can't fault that. So there's a whole thing here where she's running to the exit with a gun. She's got the little beeper thing that Jerry had to open the front door. And
Right.
she gets there, and she actually gets one half of her body outside the door, but she gets grabbed from the other side. The mob just grab her, and it's actually Lester who has the gun at this, because she drops the gun. Lester picks up the gun, and Sarah says, "Just shoot me, just shoot me. I'd rather die than still be here." And Lester shoots the person holder instead and says, "Go." So he has this like moment of defiance at the end where he kind of holds the door to stop them from getting out, and then shoots himself. And it's kind of this little heroic last moment for this person who, clearly, because he's missing an eye and his ear's also damaged, like he clearly resisted a lot more than most people, and he doesn't want to be in this, and he's just been broken down enough that he was. And it's almost like Sarah kind of reminded him of what freedom kind of felt like, or what the desire for that was. So he kind of has this one last hurrah of like letting her escape. And the big ending of the movie is that she gets outside, she runs like down the street and round the corner, and she's like, she's panting, she's out of breath, she's, the blood all over her head from killing Jerry, and she realizes that the apartment complex she's now standing in front of also has the symbol that was branded behind her ear, this cult symbol essentially. And this place's alarm starts going off, because there's one tease early on in the movie when they're in the security room, when she's like given like duty to watch the cameras. She notices there's a camera in there, and she's like, "Oh, who's watching us then? If we're all watching all these cameras, who's watching us?" And Brian just says, "Oh, that's not for us to know." But you get this sense, okay, it's not just one place. There's multiple places.
Yeah.
And then we see like alarms going off down the street. So it's like every third building essentially in this area of LA is one of these places. And it's kind of the idea that they are genuinely slowly trying to take over the planet. They want to actually turn the entire planet into one giant community like theirs, which I guess I think it could maybe allude to fascism as well, as maybe something in there, or maybe even communism might even be a better comparison for this one. But
and like then when I feel like when you see this like when at the end you see these like all these communities are the same, like too, like also like kind of reminded me of like gentrification, like it's like
I'd see that,
like just like all these places kind of moving in and just all becoming the same and whatnot.
Yeah. Also, just I think the reason why I said communism is because that was very much the fears that communism was going to slowly like creep in and take over. And I can kind of see this being like the sort of slow creep in and takeover of everything. Not that I think it's specifically about communism, because if anything, like we don't necessarily worry about that anymore. Like obviously, fascism's still a bit of an issue that we have to deal with, but. I actually, it's a shame that it's not hitting those great beats. It's a shame that the style is not quite there to really put it over the edge, because it does have like ideas. It does have these story ideas and these themes, and the character, because the movie, like, the final shot of the movie is that as she notices all these alarms, she kind of clenches her fist and decides to run. So she's running like past all these places, like even though how hard it is to dodge all these places, no matter how many people are going to come after her and make her be. In many ways, it's kind of almost a similar theme to Night of the Living Dead. It's about not conforming. It's about being yourself and not just being part of the horde and not just being part of what the society is telling you to be, kind of thing. So it's got all those elements. It's got these ideas, and it could just be, I don't know, a stronger piece of cinema to back up the ideas, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, at the very least, there is more to grasp onto this than just some random Hollywood CGI ghost horror movie or something that it's like like this is bad, but it also like doesn't have anything to say. Like not saying that this movie's bad or anything, but like, it's always more interesting that there's stuff that you can look at here and kind of dissect, versus just whatever boilerplate by the numbers kind of thing we watch a lot of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely better than all. I mean, honestly, this is probably in the upper like 30% of quality that we watch, just because we do watch a lot of bad stuff, and
yeah,
we have. I feel like this does have something to say. It's got some themes, and it's everything about the technical side is very serviceable, and I think that's what makes it kind of fall flat a little bit is that it never quite becomes that engaging to really be like, because I felt like this last like 10-15 minutes I felt like I should be like fist pumping that she's finally fighting back, and I should be fist pumping at the ending, which she's still willing to fight even though the odds are like so much stacked against her now, more than she even knew before, and I should care that this guy sacrificed herself and that she was able to like convince one person, just one, not anyone else, but just one person was convinced that they should escape, they shouldn't be part of this. Like, all these things are things that should feel like really captivating and like like I say, fist pump moments, and they don't. And I think that's kind of where it's not that I'm apathetic. Like I get what it's doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, that works well enough. But instead of feeling it, I'm going, that works well enough. And there's a difference between those two things.
No, totally. And again, I don't want to like make fun of it or disparage it too much or whatever, but like I just wish there was maybe a better style or like a sense of atmosphere or something around it, or look or something that like you said, you have this really these good ideas and these themes, but you just need maybe something on the actual film quality or stylistic side to kind of bolster it up and really marriage the two into something great.
Yeah, and it's not even, I mean, I talk about style, but I mean, I was joking earlier about shooting it in 16mm to give it a look, but I mean, we're not just solely talking about how the movie looks in terms of its color palette and its aesthetic. We're also talking about just actual direction, in the sense that like you can build a lot of style out from how you shoot the movie, from something as simple of like I don't know, longer takes, like maybe a more observational style of shooting to maybe mimic the security camera idea or something like that. Something to build the sense that she's always being watched, or something, but it's shot very conventionally. It's very simple. I can't think of any real moments in the movie where I sort of said to myself, oh, that was a really nice shot, or a really idea, or a really inventive way to cut this sequence. There was never anything like that. There was never a moment where I felt engaged because the character of the camera, as it were, is doing something interesting. And I think that's where it falls short. That's probably the biggest problem that it has. And then maybe the writing could be a little stronger. It could be a little more, I don't know, but I think honestly the direction is probably the biggest thing that would. And again, it's very serviceable. It's not bad. There's much worse. Yeah. But it's just not hitting those high notes to make it really something special.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of a compliment to the story, though, that it's like, we're still pretty positive, I guess, because the story is so good that those little things aside, that it's still able to bolster and make an interesting movie to watch.
Yeah, I do wonder. Yeah, like because it's a writer director here, David Marmor wrote and directed it. I do wonder if you take his script and give it to, and I don't mean insult him here, but I wonder if you give his script to another director. If you give his script to, I'm gonna try to think of an example. I mean maybe. Karen Kusama from The Invitation is the obvious choice, just because I compared it to that a couple of times. But like, if you give his script to another director, does that extra voice for a visual style, or does that like elevate it to the point where we would be talking about this as if it's really special? Where another director would hold on, because I think obviously auteurs who do the writing and the directing, and that's something that's really great when you have someone who's good at it. But I do wonder if sometimes some of these like smaller movies fall victim to the idea that it's almost like the script, and in the script the director knows exactly what he wants these things to be, so he doesn't really challenge it when he shoots it. He doesn't challenge it at any point later with more creativity. He just kind of accepts that his story is already good enough that...
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every other director's like that. Of course it's not. That's not true at all. But I do get the sense that sometimes that's an issue where, like, having another director look at the material then makes them challenge, okay, how can I get the feeling that I want this scene to feel through the shooting on top of what's on the page? And I feel like here, there's none of that. It's just, no, what I wrote on the page is good, so I'm just going to cover it as simply as possible and just do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's two very different skill sets. So, there's plenty of examples of, people that can do both, for sure. But, yeah, I mean, but I mean, maybe you're a really good writer doesn't automatically mean that, yeah, you're the best director, or maybe you are a good director, but maybe, yeah, if you're too, precious about your own material or whatever.
And obviously, none of this is a hard and fast rule. There's definitely examples. I would say Christopher Nolan's a better director than a writer, but he does write for his own movies, and he writes inventively enough with these concepts that I don't really want him, like, I don't really want other people writing these, movies without him involved.
Sure.
And on a, similar vibe but the opposite way, Joss Whedon's definitely more of a writer than a director, but we've seen examples of other people directing his scripts in the past, and they just kind of don't get his thing, so they just kind of, like, they ignore all of the Whedon-y elements of it, and he kind of needs to be there to, like, maintain, like, what's in his script actually comes across. But then there's other examples where, yeah, like Ridley Scott's actually a very good visual director, but he needs a good script, and if you don't give him a good script, then his movie's going to be trash. So,
yeah.
but then there's, of course, writer-directors who are just, like, I don't know, David Lynch, for example. Like, maybe that's too weird of an example, but he certainly knows what he's doing, and he certainly like tackle. But that's another example where he almost has to direct his own stuff in a weird way, because imagine reading some of his scenes on a page without him knowing what he's going to do with it in the filmmaking later.
Yeah.
In fact, that's almost a detriment to the scripts, is that if they know they're going to shoot it, they don't necessarily feel that they have to write down as much, because, like, okay, I know how I'm going to shoot this. I know how this is going to feel later. So the script is very kind of like, oh, I'll just vaguely say this is what's going to happen. And I'm not saying David Lynch does that, but I can imagine that there's some directors who probably don't put as much in the script because they know they're shooting it. They know they're picking everything anyway. So, yeah, it's rough. Anyway, obviously there's still details that have to be there for other people who are working on it, like the set designer, for example, or whatever, needs to be able to read details. But anyway, the point I'm making, I guess, is that I just, maybe David Marmor can keep improving. I don't know if this is like, let me click on him and see what he's done so far. Let's see if this is an early film of his. Yeah, this is kind of, he's done like a TV episode and a couple of shorts. This was his first feature-length movie. So, I mean, I could see him improving. I could see this being kind of the early step. If you go back and look at Mike Flanagan's first movie, Absentia, I think it was called, that movie is garbage. Like, like, it is terrible. It's got a really good idea, unfortunately, but the actual, like, the acting and the direction is terrible. So, good things can come of directors, and there's potential here. So,
definitely, I mean, I'd be more than happy to give his next thing a shot. Yeah.
So, I guess we'll rate the movie then. Tim, what you giving it?
I think I'll just give it a straight 6. Which again, it's to me that it's good, but it's not great. It's not amazing. It's it's a decent watch. Like we said, like hey, it's a great movie to stream. But yeah, unfortunately, it's good, but it's just like we said, it's kind of just missing that oomph to really get it over the edge and perk it up to something else.
Yeah, I might go a little nudge higher. I might say 6.5. I think, because I think there's a lot of good elements in the story, and I think it almost gets to that good level. It's one of those things where it's just almost there, almost frustratingly so, to being good.
Sure.
It's got a little bit of a hill to climb to be great, but it's almost just in that good realm. So I think 6.5, because I always think of 7 as being good, 8 being great. So I think 6.5 is kind of exactly where I feel like it belongs right now.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is 1BR. If you made it to the end of the review, please do tell us in the comments with I don't know, The word Giles. Put the word Giles in chat in the comments if you made it this far. But you can, of course, like and subscribe. Liking is really important on YouTube as well, as is the comments. Lets YouTube know it's worth recommending out to other people who are horror fans or movie podcast fans or whatever type of fans it could be. Rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts 5 stars as well if you want to help us on the podcast end of things. Of course, you can support us via patreon.com/MailFestTV, as we mentioned earlier, for as little as $1 per month, so please do that. Get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight for shenanigans and updates and all sorts. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time. Oh, actually, I forgot our new segment. Tim, I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to pause. Without cutting off the top of your head, right? That's important.
Okay.
Right? Nothing cutting off the edges, except from the bottom, obviously. All right. 3, 2, 1, pause! That's certainly interesting. Okay. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.